Welcome to another Fantasy Goodfellas video where we talk about the top 30 wide receiver rankings for week 3. You ready?
The Fantasy Goodfellas.
Boom, boom, boom. Rolling on the field.
The Fantasy Goodfellas.
All right, before we get started, let me tell you what to expect in this video. We are going to show you the top 30 predictions and rankings for week 3. We're going to give a little insight into those rankings, what we think, what's not good, and we hope our stat machine helps you set your lineups. All right, you ready? Let's get started. All right, at number 1, you have CeeDee Lamb versus the Baltimore Ravens. No question that CeeDee Lamb was a top draft pick this year. He finally showed up. I expected a little bit more from this because 65 yards was in one reception. So that's a little disappointing when the bulk of it came in one play. Number 2, Tyreek Hill at the Seattle Seahawks. Now this is going to be interesting because Tua went down, and now you have Skylar Thompson throwing, and he hasn't really thrown to Tyreek Hill, or Tyreek Hill hasn't really gone off when Skylar's in the game. So that'll be something to pay attention to. But if you got Tyreek Hill, you got to play him. Number 3, Jamar Chase versus the Washington Commanders. Jamar Chase had a temper tantrum on the sidelines. He only had 35 receiving yards. I expect more from him. He did have a better week 1. And what's going on with Jamar Chase? Is he happy? Number 4, you got Justin Jefferson versus the Houston Texans. I don't know if he's going to play. He's hampered. He had that 97-yard touchdown, and then he hurt his quad. So we don't know what to expect with Justin Jefferson. But again, if you're not paying attention to these stats, the biggest surprise up there is Sam Darnold holding his own. At number 5, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown at the Arizona Cardinals. And St. Brown had 119 receiving yards, didn't get into the end zone. And if you look at week 1, definitely picked it up from week 1. That's what you need to happen. Number 6, Brandon Aiyuk at the Los Angeles Rams. And something's going on with Brandon. I don't know if he's playing. Somebody's not playing. I forget which one it is. But pay attention to that receiving core. And Brock Purdy, 319 passing yards. That's good. Just one touchdown is not. So pay attention to what's going on up in San Francisco. Number 7, Rasheed Rice at the Atlanta Falcons. Hopefully, Rasheed Rice can pick it up a little bit. He did have a pretty decent game, 75 receiving yards, 1 receiving TD, but you expect Rasheed Rice to do much better than that. And that Atlanta Falcons defense looked good. So I think this is I don't think it's going to work out quite this good for Rasheed Rice in week 3. Number 8, Nico Collins at the Minnesota Vikings. Nico looked like a stud. He had 135 receiving yards, 1 receiving TD. I think he's just becoming one of the top receivers in this league. I expect him to do just as good as he did in week 2. At number 9, you have Mike Evans versus the Denver Broncos. You know, Mike Evans, he's been around for a while, and week 1, he got into the end zone twice. Week 2, he didn't get into the end zone, but Baker Mayfield is doing pretty good. So we expect good things for Mike Evans this week as well. At number 10, Garrett Wilson versus the New England Patriots. You know, a lot of people picked Garrett Wilson high in the draft this year. So far, he hasn't worked out to his drafting. So you got week 1, 60 yards out of the top 30. Week 2, 57 yards and out of the top 30. And is he going to be out of the top 30 again? Probably. Number 11, Devonte Smith at the New Orleans Saints. Looks like A.J. Brown isn't playing this week. Devonte Smith looked like a stud out there catching versus the Falcons. He did get into the end zone. I expect him to have an even better game in week 3. And number 12, you got Marvin Harrison Jr. versus the Detroit Lions. Show some love to my guy Marvin Harrison. 2 receiving touchdown, 130 yards. Look at this. On 4 receptions. And you're not going to show him love? I think he's going to be much better than 12. At 13, DJ Moore at the Indianapolis Colts. I saw a video that he was getting pissed off at Caleb Williams. Is there some controversy up there? Possibly. And that's not going to bode well for DJ Moore if you're getting pissed off at the quarterback, because he doesn't have to throw it to you. At number 14, Chris Olave versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Chris Olave is having a decent season. 81 receiving yards, 7 rushing yards. That's almost 100 yards. He did much better in week 1, so we expect him to do good things in week 3. Number 15, Drake London versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I think there's going to be some opportunities for Drake London in week 3. He got into the end zone in week 2. Week 1, he did not, had a subpar game, but just, Kirk Cousins looked like he's just back to Kirk Cousins. He can have those monster games or just, sling it around. At number 16, Zay Flowers at the Dallas Cowboys. Zay Flowers had a great week 2, 91 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. You go back to week 1, 37 receiving yards, 14 rushing yards. But Zay Flowers, he's a speedster. I look forward to him getting into the end zone again this week. At number 17, DK Metcalf versus the Miami Dolphins. Let's look at what Metcalf did. If you're not watching all these games, 129 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. Look at this. Jackson Smith, he did pretty good too. So there looks like there's 2 opportunities for receivers, and you always have Tyler Lockett. So I expect Metcalf to have another good game in week 3. At 18, Chris Godwin versus the Denver Broncos. Chris Godwin got into the end zone, had 117 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. With Baker Mayfield, I think we can count on him now. At number 19, you got Devonte Adams versus the Carolina Panthers. I guess is Gardner Minshew settling in as a Las Vegas Raider? Seems to be. 276 passing yards, 1 passing TD. Look at this, 30 for 38. That's excellent. And that's going to bode well for Devonte Adams. At number 20, you have Malik Neighbors at the Cleveland Browns. All right, Malik Neighbors did 127 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. If you go here and look at Daniel Jones, it looks like all that passing yards went to one person, Malik Neighbors. And look, that's not really spreading the ball around. 3 targets. There's no running backs, no tight ends. So Malik Neighbors, yeah, you might have had a good game, but I don't expect that to happen this week. Number 21, Stefan Diggs at Minnesota Vikings. Now, Stefan Diggs could have lost it for some of you all out there. 37 receiving yards, that's not good. Week 1, he did a little bit better than that because he had 2 receiving touchdowns. But look, about the same receiving yards. He's going to need to pick it up or at least get into the end zone, one or the other. It doesn't look like it's going to be both, though. Number 22, you got Tink Dell at the Minnesota Vikings. Now you got 2 Houston Texans receivers in the top 30, and this is what it looks like there. Nico Collins. So you got Nico Collins, Stefan Diggs, and Tink Dell all in the top 30. I don't think there's enough balls to get that much action. At number 23, Amari Cooper versus the New York Giants. Deshaun Watson's picking it up, but I think Amari Cooper is not. I don't expect much from him this season. You got Jerry Jeudy. I think Judy's going to have a better season up there in Cleveland, but we'll see what happens this week. Number 24, you got Jalen Waddle at the Seattle Seahawks. Again, same thing with Tyreek Hill. You got Skylar Thompson throwing the ball to him. What's going to happen is anybody's guess. He's just got a nice pedigree, and you expect him to do well, but I kind of doubt it. Number 25, Jameson Williams at the Arizona Cardinals. He had a great week 2. He had 79 receiving yards, 15 rushing yards. But remember, he's got some weapons up there, so they're going to sling it around. St. Brown might have a good Week 2, it might be Jameson Williams. But look, they're getting them involved. That's all you want to see happen. At number 26, you got George Pickens versus the Los Angeles Chargers. And, now that they seem to be going with Fields because Wilson's hurt, what to expect? Pickens is a stud. It's just who's going to throw it to him. There's no expectations up there in Pittsburgh when it comes to quarterbacks. And even Pat Freiermuth, he had a good last season. So, I don't know. It's a little disappointing. At number 27, you got Michael Pittman Jr. versus the Chicago Bears. And how disappointing is Michael Pittman this season? 21 receiving yards in week 2. In week 1, 31 receiving yards. Last season, he had many more top 10s than this season. It just very disappointing again. At 28, T. Higgins versus the Washington Commanders. He didn't get any stats in week 1. I think he's coming off of injury, so now he's going to be back in the lineup. He's doing good, but I think it's going to be Jamar Chase in week 3 up there in the Bengals. At 29, Calvin Ridley versus the Green Bay Packers. Calvin Ridley had 1 receiving touchdown, 1 rushing touchdown, 87 total yards. That's pretty good. And let's just take a look at that offense as a whole in case you're not paying attention to it. You got Will Levis, 192 passing yards. Most of them went to Calvin Ridley. Spreading the ball, 2 running backs. Looks like they're just short dingers. But I expect Calvin Ridley to have a big game. And I don't think it's ever going to be DeAndre Hopkins this season. And at number 30, you got Xavier Worthy at the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this is the part that we're curious about, right? So you got Patrick Mahomes, subpar game, 151 passing yards, 2 passing TDs. Travis Kelce, such a disappointment. But coming off of the week 1 performance from Xavier Worthy, 2 touchdowns. Now you have Rasheed Rice. Some people went with Xavier Worthy because he had those 2 touchdowns. So that's a drop-off. And I don't expect Xavier Worthy to have an explosive game. I expect him to get about 50 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. We'll see what happens when it comes to that. All right, that does it for this week's wide receiver rankings. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we hope this video helps set your lineups. All right, good luck. See you next week.